The smell of pine and cinnamon filled the house that Christmas Eve. Snow was falling outside, covering the streets in white. Inside, the fireplace crackled, casting warm shadows across the living room where my family had gathered. I should have known something was wrong when my father called this emergency family meeting. He never did things like this. But I pushed the worry aside, thinking maybe he just wanted to make this Christmas special. My sister Victoria sat on the expensive leather couch, her designer dress perfectly pressed, her makeup flawless as always. She was 28, 3 years older than me, and had always been the golden child. I sat in the corner chair, wearing my simple jeans and sweater, feeling out of place as usual. Mom stood by the window, unusually quiet. Her hands were shaking slightly, I noticed. Dad stood in the center of the room, holding 2 envelopes. "I've made some important decisions," he announced, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. "Victoria, come here." My sister stood up gracefully, a smile already forming on her lips. She always knew when good things were coming her way. Dad handed her the gold-embossed envelope. She opened it carefully, her eyes widening as she pulled out the papers inside. "A penthouse," she gasped. "Dad, it's in the Diamond Tower downtown. Worth $2 million, Dad said proudly. "You've earned it, Victoria. Your MBA from Harvard, your position at the firm, your engagement to Senator Wallace's son. You've made this family proud. You're everything a father could want in a daughter." He hugged her tight, and she was crying now, tears of joy streaming down her perfect face. Then his eyes turned to me. The warmth vanished from his expression, replaced by something cold and hard. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled plastic bag, the kind you get from discount stores. He didn't hand it to me. He tossed it at my feet. "Everyone gets exactly what they deserve," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Take your trash and get out of my house." I bent down slowly, picking up the bag with trembling hands. Inside was a DNA testing kit, the kind that cost about $2 at clearance sales. "Dad." My voice came out as barely a whisper. "I don't understand." "Don't you?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've been nothing but a disappointment since the day you were born. While Victoria was winning academic awards, you were barely passing. While she was building a career, you were working at that pathetic bookstore. Look at you. 25 years old with nothing to show for your life." "Robert, please." Mom finally spoke, her voice breaking. "Stay out of this, Margaret," Dad snapped. "I've made my decision. Victoria deserves everything. She gets the penthouse, the trust fund, the family business. And this one," he gestured at me dismissively, "gets a cheap DNA kit because frankly, I sometimes wonder if she's even really mine. Maybe that would explain why she's such a failure." The room spun around me. I looked at Victoria, hoping for support, but she looked away. Mom was crying silently by the window. "You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave," Dad continued. "Don't bother coming back." I don't remember walking up the stairs to my room. I don't remember packing my clothes into the old suitcase I'd used for college. Everything felt like I was moving through water, slow and heavy. By the time I came back downstairs, Dad had retreated to his study. Victoria was showing Mom pictures of the penthouse on her phone. Neither of them looked at me as I walked toward the door. "Sarah, wait." Mom's voice stopped me. She pressed something into my hand. "An envelope. Take this. Please." Before I could respond, Dad's voice thundered from the study. "Margaret, get in here." Mom squeezed my hand once and hurried away. I stepped out into the snow, pulling my coat tighter. I had nowhere to go. My small apartment lease didn't start until next month. The bookstore where I worked was closed for the holidays. I ended up at the 24-hour diner on 5th Street, the one that never closed, even on Christmas Eve. I ordered coffee I couldn't afford and sat in the corner booth, finally opening Mom's envelope. Inside were $300 in cash and a note in her handwriting. "I'm sorry. So sorry. Check your grandmother's safety deposit box. The key is taped inside your old diary, the one with the blue cover. I love you. Always have, always will." My grandmother had passed away 2 years ago. I'd been close to her in a way I'd never been close to my father. But I didn't know anything about a safety deposit box. The old diary was still in my suitcase, buried under clothes. I found it, and sure enough, taped inside the back cover was a small brass key with a number engraved on it. The next morning, Christmas Day, I was at the bank the moment it opened. The manager, an older woman who remembered my grandmother, led me to the vault. Inside the safety deposit box were papers, letters, documents, and photographs I'd never seen before. I sat in the small private room the bank provided and began to read. The first letter was dated 30 years ago, written in my grandmother's neat handwriting. My dearest Margaret, I know the truth about what Robert's family is hiding. I know about the offshore accounts, the questionable business deals, the money funneled through the charitable foundation. I've gathered evidence, not to use it, but to protect you and your future children if it ever becomes necessary. Robert may have money, but he built it on deception and greed. Keep these documents safe. One day, you or your daughters may need them. My hands were shaking as I continued reading. There were bank statements showing transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands, emails discussing deals that skirted legal boundaries, contracts that showed my father's construction company had cut corners on safety regulations, leading to accidents that were quietly covered up with money. But that wasn't the worst of it. There was a letter from my mother to my grandmother, dated 26 years ago, just before I was born. Mom, I don't know what to do. Robert has changed. The man I married is gone. He only cares about money and status now. He's furious that I'm pregnant again. He wanted one perfect child to mold into his image, and he got that with Victoria. He says another child will drain resources, divide the inheritance, complicate his plans. He's been cold to me throughout this pregnancy. Sometimes I catch him looking at my stomach with such resentment. I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared for this baby. I had to stop reading. Tears were blurring the words. My father hadn't just neglected me. He had resented my existence from before I was even born. There was more. A letter from my grandmother to me, sealed in an envelope with my name on it. My darling Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and something has happened that forced your mother to give you the key. I want you to know something that your father has spent your whole life trying to make you forget. You are valuable. You are loved. You are not a disappointment. I've watched you grow into a kind, thoughtful, intelligent young woman. You help elderly customers at the bookstore find the perfect novel. You volunteer at the children's hospital reading stories. You sent me handwritten letters every week when I was sick, when your father and Victoria were too busy to call. Your father measures worth in money and status. But real worth is measured in kindness, integrity, and love. By those measures, my dear, you are wealthy beyond his comprehension. I've left you something. In the envelope marked for Sarah's future. You'll find the deed to my cottage by the lake and a trust fund I established in your name years ago. Your father doesn't know about either. The cottage is small but paid off. The trust fund has $50,000. It's not a fortune, but it's a start. More importantly, I've documented your father's illegal activities. Not for revenge, but for protection. If he ever tries to hurt you or your mother, you'll have the leverage to stop him. Remember, you don't need his approval. You never did. Build your own life, on your own terms. And know that I loved you more than he could ever understand. Your grandmother always. I sat in that small bank room and cried. Not tears of sadness, but of release. For the first time in my life, someone had seen me. Really seen me. The cottage. I could go there now. I had a place to live. Over the next few weeks, I settled into my grandmother's cottage. It was an hour outside the city, nestled by a quiet lake. The bookstore owner, Mrs. Chun, let me transfer to the branch near the cottage. The pay was still modest, but now I had no rent to worry about. I took that DNA test my father had thrown at me, not because I doubted my mother, but because I needed to close that chapter. When the results came back, they confirmed what I already knew. Robert was my biological father. Not that it mattered anymore. I didn't contact my family. Mom called once, crying, but Dad took the phone and told me never to contact them again. I heard Victoria got married in a lavish ceremony that spring. I wasn't invited. Life became quiet, peaceful. I started writing in the mornings before work, something I'd always loved but never had time for. I volunteered at the local library. I made friends in the small town who knew nothing about my father's money or my sister's achievements. They just knew me as Sarah, the girl who recommended great books and made excellent coffee. 6 months after that terrible Christmas Eve, I was working at the bookstore when a man in an expensive suit walked in. He looked out of place among the used paperbacks and creaking wooden floors. "Are you Sarah Mitchell?" he asked. My heart raced. Had my father sent someone? "I'm attorney James Bradford. I represent a publisher in the city. They've received a manuscript submission that they're very interested in." The author listed this bookstore as her contact point. I stared at him. "I don't understand. You submitted a novel 3 months ago." The space between words. "The editorial board loved it. They want to offer you a publishing contract." The manuscript. I'd sent it on a whim, never expecting anything to come of it. It was a story about a woman finding herself after her family rejected her. I'd written it in those quiet morning hours at the cottage, pouring my heart onto the pages. "They're offering a $20,000 advance, with potential for more depending on sales," Mr. Bradford continued. "And they want to discuss a 2-book deal." My legs felt weak. Mrs. Chun brought me a chair. Over the next year, everything changed. The book was published under a pen name I chose, S.J. Mitchell. It didn't become a massive bestseller, but it sold steadily. Readers connected with the story. They wrote letters saying it helped them heal from their own family wounds. The publisher offered me a contract for 3 more books. I quit the bookstore, though I still volunteered there twice a week. I wrote full-time from the cottage, watching the seasons change over the lake. I built a life I loved. Small, quiet, but mine. I heard news of my family occasionally through mutual acquaintances. Victoria's marriage was struggling. Her husband spent more time with his political career than with her. Dad's company was facing lawsuits over those same safety violations my grandmother had documented. Then, almost 2 years after that Christmas Eve, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Sarah?" It was Victoria's voice, but different. Broken. "Please don't hang up." I almost did. But something made me wait. "I need help," she said, crying now. "My marriage is over. Dad's company is bankrupt. He took out loans using the Penthouse as collateral, and now the bank is taking it back. Mom is sick. Really sick. And Dad, he's being investigated for fraud. Everything is falling apart." I said nothing. "I know I don't deserve your help," Victoria continued. "I stood there that night and watched him destroy you. I was jealous, Sarah. You were always so genuinely kind and people loved you for it. I had to work so hard to make Dad proud, and it was never enough. So when he finally gave me everything, I didn't question it. I didn't defend you. I'm so sorry." "Where's Dad now?" I asked, my voice flat. "He's at the house. He's been drinking heavily since the investigation started. He keeps saying everything would have been fine if he'd just focused on Victoria, his real successor. He's blaming everyone but himself." I thought about the documents in my grandmother's safety deposit box. I still had them, stored securely. "Victoria, I need you to listen carefully," I said. "Take Mom to the cottage. The address is 428 Lakeside Road, Willow Creek. There's a key under the turtle statue by the door. Get her medical attention in town. Dr. Patterson at the clinic is excellent. I'll cover the costs." "But what about?" "Leave Dad to face what he created. You and Mom can stay at the cottage as long as you need. But Victoria, you need to understand something. I'm not doing this for him. I'm not doing this because we're family. I'm doing this because Mom tried to protect me when she could, and because you finally found the courage to apologize. That means something. What about you? Where will you stay?" "I have options now," I said. "I built something for myself. Something Dad could never take away." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "You sound different. Stronger." "I am. That evening, I called my attorney. I gave him copies of my grandmother's documents regarding Dad's illegal activities. Not to press charges, but to provide to the federal investigators. They would handle it from there. My father would face justice, but it wouldn't be revenge. It would be consequences. I called Mrs. Chun and arranged to rent the small apartment above the bookstore in town. The cottage would be there when Mom recovered, But right now, she needed it more than I did. 2 days later, I received an email from a literary magazine. They wanted to interview me about my book. The journalist asked about my inspiration. I thought about that Christmas Eve. The gold-embossed envelope. The crumpled plastic bag. The DNA test that was meant to shame me. I wrote about finding worth in yourself when the people who should have loved you couldn't. I told her. About building a life from ashes. About understanding that sometimes the greatest gift is being forced to stand on your own. Your father sounds like a difficult man, the journalist said carefully. He taught me something valuable, I replied. He taught me that his approval was worthless. Once I understood that, I was free to discover my own worth. And that was priceless. The article came out the following month. My book sales tripled. I signed a contract for a 5th book with a significant advance. I visited the cottage that spring. Mom was recovering slowly, sitting on the porch and watching the birds. Victoria had gotten a job at a local nonprofit, using her business degree to help people instead of making money. She looked tired but more peaceful than I'd ever seen her. Thank you, Mom said, taking my hand. For everything. I know I should have protected you better. You did what you could, I said. And you gave me grandmother's key. That changed everything. Your father is in prison, she said quietly. 3 years for fraud and negligence. He's demanding we visit, but you don't owe him anything, I said firmly. Neither of us do. Victoria joined us on the porch bringing tea. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun set over the lake. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he'd given you the penthouse instead? Victoria asked suddenly. I thought about it. I'd probably still be trying to earn his approval. Still measuring my worth by his standards. Still trapped. So that DNA test was actually a gift? I smiled. In the strangest way, yes. It was the push I needed to find my own path. To discover that I didn't need his version of success. I needed my own. That night, I returned to my apartment above the bookstore and opened my laptop. I had a new story forming. About 3 women who found strength in each other after a patriarch's empire crumbled. As I typed the first words, I thought about my father's parting statement that Christmas Eve. Everyone gets exactly what they deserve. He was right, though not in the way he intended. He deserved the consequences of his greed and cruelty. Victoria deserved the chance to rebuild herself with integrity. Mom deserved peace after years of living in fear. And me? I deserved the life I'd built. The cottage by the lake. The books I'd written. The quiet contentment of knowing I was enough, exactly as I was. The DNA test kit still sat in a drawer somewhere, unused and forgotten. I'd never needed it to tell me who I was. I'd figured that out on my own. That Christmas Eve had been the worst night of my life. But it had also been the beginning of the best decision I ever made. To stop seeking love from someone incapable of giving it, and to start building a life I actually wanted to live. My father had given me trash and told me to leave. Instead, I'd found treasure and discovered freedom. And in the end, that was worth more than any penthouse could ever be.